Peter, it's all yours, my friend.
Okay. Well, thank you. My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic, and grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. Eric, thanks for having me out here. I pitching a double header today, double booked. I was on one earlier today, and I got your text messages. Oh boy, I did it again. So we'll see what God has in the tank for me tonight. But I'm grateful to be here. Um, June 23rd, 1988 is when the love and God separated me from alcohol. And I'm very grateful for that gift. Um, Especially this time of year, I'm not a big Christmas guy. A little bit of I can be a Scrooge if I'm not careful for a lot of reasons, but it is a time where I am grateful. And things that make me grateful, real quick, it was the early 80s, and I took my first arrest about 2 days before Christmas. And never been arrested before. I was petrified when the handcuffs went on. And I spent a couple of days at 100 Center Street, New York, a place called the Tombs, which is lovely to be in at Christmas time. And sleeping on the floor and thinking I'm going to get the electric chair for what I was doing. And I was just so afraid. And I kept thinking, God, get me out of this one. I'll never do it again. I ruined my family's Christmas. And when I finally got released, the first place I went to was right back to where I got arrested. And there were many more arrests ahead of me, and consequences didn't stop me from drinking. There were many more ruined Christmases because of my nonsense with my family. That didn't stop me from drinking. There was one Christmas I was driving around in a car, was a moving violation with no money and no gas, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm in panic, and it was the first time what we call suicidal ideations. I'm thinking of ways I can just knock myself off because life was just terribly painful. And I was all a ripe old age of about maybe at that point 25. And it was an awful design for living that I had. So when I get to do a Zoom and I'm home, my wife's inside preparing dinner. When I'm done here, did a Zoom this afternoon, a home group on a Wednesday, and I'm above ground sucking air as sober, as I was told for many years. It's a really cool life. I do have a home group. It's called No Problems, Just Solutions in Boca Raton. We meet Wednesday nights at 7:30. It's the coolest place for me to be. We get there around 6 o'clock, and we run out of seats by 7. And when the meeting ends at 8:30, we're there till past 9, just hanging out. No one's bolting for the doors and home. So it's the soul music of Alcoholics Anonymous that we hear before and after the meeting that I really love hearing. It's us talking and cutting up and having fun and serious conversations way before the meeting starts and when the meeting ends as well. It's just a great place to be. I do have a sponsor. His name is Bob Azana out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and he just made 58 years sober last week, which was pretty remarkable. So I'm very blessed. I'm sponsoring 11 guys right now, so God has me very busy. I was sharing earlier that our big book says we alcoholics are undisciplined, and God will discipline us in a simple way we've just outlined. We've outlined in the book. What has happened to me over the years is my love for Alcoholics Anonymous, the methodology, the fellowship. My God, the discipline, quite frankly, for me, has turned into devotion, and it's the way I live. And discipline weighs, as I heard an old timer say, discipline weighs an ounce, regrets weigh a ton. So the discipline is a small price to pay, and I really love just. I've been brought to this place of my job is to please God, no one else. But yet, when I please God, I please others, and I'm traveling pretty light. So it's been a great ride thus far. Um, June of '88, my life looked nothing like it does now. And I will say on the front end, I'm sober a number of years now, and get to do a lot of service in Alcoholics Anonymous. But your speaker here, which is me, is far from perfect. I need to tell you, the human condition for me is broken and flawed. And there was a time in my early days in Alcoholics Anonymous. Hi, Patty. In my early days in Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought because I had a sponsor, I'm making meetings and do the steps, that I ought to levitate at any moment and never have resentment, never have fear, and life is just going to go according to my plans, and I'm due to hit the lottery at any moment because I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I would get fear and resentful, I thought I was falling short with something. And then, the truth is true until we discover a new truth. And one day it burst upon me, the aha moment, the realization about how broken and flawed I am. And it was unbelievably liberating coming to terms with my own brokenness, not as an excuse to sit in it, but it's actually freeing that I don't have to be perfect. And what we identify with when we speak is our own brokenness, the shared brokenness. When someone tells a story, what it was like, we get it. And even the challenges that we meet in sobriety, we get it. It's our own falling short, falling into self-reliance, forgetting God and remembering my way of doing things. And it always brings about some turmoil, but we get it. And it was incredibly liberating for me. It's also the way God designed it. He doesn't need perfect people. In our brokenness is how we heal, because we share that and then we work on a solution. So Alcoholics Anonymous has done more. Anyone around here a while will agree with me, a lot more than just removing the drink from me. God has done a lot more than just removing the drink from me. It has given me a design for living, which has worked a day at a time. And so I chop wood and carry water, and all the glory goes to God and Alcoholics Anonymous. The sacred rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I guess if I had a prayer for anyone, it would be that you stuck around long enough in this fellowship to experience the sacredness of AA, where we see and hear lives get reborn and resurrected for fun and for free. You don't need a good insurance policy. You don't need to be the right political party. You need any of those things. You just need, hey, I want to stop drinking. I have a desire to stop drinking. We will sit you down, pour you a cup of coffee, and resurrect your life. I had no idea what I was in for when I walked into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in 1988. I thought it was about just not drinking. I thought my problem was in the whiskey bottle, and it isn't. Because when I put down the whiskey, I was still not okay. And I found that here I get my soul food, and I need to get soul food to nourish the soul, because when I'm right with the soul, I'm right with you and I'm right with me. My first drink came, I'm an old Brooklyn boy, Brooklyn, New York. You could tell I'm not from Texas by the way I speak. I come from an Italian American Catholic family, and it's obnoxious and loud. We make the Sopranos look like, hippies. You say, I love you in my family, it sounds like a threat. I mean, it's like, yo, I love you. I mean, it's just interesting crowd in my family. But growing up in Brooklyn was pretty cool back in the day. I remember mid-late 60s, early 70s. And the music was the best. We had rock and roll and Motown. It was before disco and MTV ruined everything. It was hippies. It was hanging out on street corners, drinking Colt 45 beer. And I'm sure it was like this in other parts of the country. But I remember growing up in Brooklyn, there was a pecking order to work your way up. You had to do something rough and tough to prove yourself, to get in with the older guys, the men on the corner who were about 17 and knew life and all its secrets. And I that's what I was doing. My first drunk comes at 14 years old, and I gotta tell you, up until the first drink I took, I was not okay. And I'm not exaggerating, it was really not okay. I presented well. My family, my mom and dad taught me about good hygiene and manners and things like that. I presented well. But what was I was like Gucci on the outside and Walmart on the inside. I mean, it's the best way I can put it. I presented well, but I was not okay. I had just lost my mom via suicide when I was 14, and she was one of us. She never found the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. She found psychiatrists and psych wards that medicated her. And after about a half a dozen attempts trying to take her own life, she succeeded in January 1974. And I was completely leveled by that. I would say my mom was a practicing Catholic and would drag us to church and talk to us about all the wonderful blessings God gives us. But I watched her get sicker and sicker, and then take her life, and I was leveled by that. My dad, I was terribly afraid of. He was a real tough guy from South Brooklyn, and there wasn't warm and fuzzy fireplace chats with my old man. He threw money at every problem and balked a lot, and we never got along. I was a kid, ages 8 to 10. I was being sexually abused by someone. So when I show up to a street corner at 14, I'm not okay. Now, I just want to mention something, and please, I'm no authority here, and I'm not a spokesman for AA. But I've heard enough stories over the years. In the business I'm in, I hear them daily. That what I walked in with is many of us, maybe not all of us, walk in with it's something called trauma. Whether it's sexual, physical, emotional abuse, or something like that. Even parents getting divorced can level a kid. And we walk into AA failing to realize that at teenage years, my blueprint as how I'm going to go into life has been put on paper. I'm set now. I'm going to operate out of that trauma, how I see the world, how I hear the world, how I act in the world. And it took a long time for me to reconstruct all of that. That just going to meetings was not going to remedy that. Albeit 4 through 9 took a big chunk of that and healed it. I had to see some outside help in order to fix that and heal from all of that. And I will tell you, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous at 28 years old, I was still operating like that 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. My outlook in life, my attitude, my language, the way I saw life was still that way, even though I'm in a 28-year-old body and a whole lot of work had to be done. Totally consumed with me and my feelings and how I'm seeing life. And I continued to forfeit every invitation that came from God. I was so miserable with me and wound up so tight. I'm prey to any temptation that's out there to kind of give me some relief from me. And what Alcoholics Anonymous has allowed me to do is be okay for the most part in my own skin. And you can't throw money at that. You can't throw money at the soul because it's never for sale. But God could and would if He saw it, fix it. So my first drunk comes at 14 years old, and I remember drinking half a quart of beer and feeling something I never experienced before. And that's what our book talks about, a sense of ease and comfort that came at once by taking a few drinks I see others taking with impunity. Everyone was having a good time. Why not I? And immediately I liked the effect produced by it. I wasn't thinking of the bad things that happened to me. And by the time I finished a quart of beer, I know I'm drunk. I can feel drunk. I understand why people want to get drunk. It was warm and fuzzy. And I felt completely in control for the first time in my life. I felt safe and protected. I was able to roughhouse with the guys and flirt with the girls, make a fool of myself, but it was absolutely lovely. And I loved the effect produced by it. I knew nothing about this craving to alcohol. You know, when I drink alcohol, I get stuck in more. I need more, and I'll go to any lengths for more. I know nothing about this obsession. And who ever heard of spiritual malady? Not until I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't even think there's anything wrong with me. I grew up tonight. I drank. I'm a man. I got my stripes. And on the way home, I'm thinking I'm never going to be sober again. And I can't tell you how many times I would reflect upon that I didn't realize how much bondage I was in a situation until I tasted a little bit of freedom. And what was I doing living this way? Like when we're in a bad relationship, we know what that sounds like and what it feels like and what it looks like. And then you get out and you go, what was I thinking? And I realized I never want to be sober again. I'm not going to make music sober again. I'm not going to go to school sober again. I'm not doing anything. I love the effect produced by being drunk, and I want to stay there. And I chased that elusive feeling. It was a few years later, the consequences began, and the trapdoors have trapdoors. And I started to get in a lot of trouble. Mickey Mouse trouble compared to what I was about to get into, but trouble nonetheless. My younger brothers who idolized me were arguing a lot. over my shenanigans. My dad is looking at me like, what happened to my son? Even my grandparents were wondering what happened to you, because my attitude, it wasn't just being drunk, it was my whole attitude and outlook upon life changed, and it wasn't good. I was full of contempt and anger for everything and everyone. And the only relief I got was when I drank. So it worked for a short time. And then one morning I woke up and I realized if I got up before everyone, I can take money that was lying around the house and perhaps they won't miss it. I began to do that. And then one morning I stole from my dad's checkbook and I forged his name on a check and cashed it and got away with it. I didn't know anything about checking statements back then. I thought when you cash a check, it kind of just vanished into space somewhere. And I did this regularly, and then my dad got a checking statement back in the mail, and he came looking for me. Remember that movie Goodfellas, that Robert De Niro character? I mean, that's my dad. This guy didn't smile when he was happy, and you didn't want him looking for you. And he came looking for me. He told me years later in sobriety, he says, it wasn't the money. I couldn't believe my son stole from me. It broke my heart. I was furious. But that's what I do. I step on people. And when they retaliate, I'm like, what did I do? What is the problem? Because alcoholism will never allow me to see a truth. It'll just give me lies and I'll buy them. And so when my dad found me, I was in Lower Manhattan sitting in a car with this young lady I had met the night before. So I was in like love or stalking, the same thing for an alcoholic. And my dad rolled up and I decided to run away, but he caught me and I went off to my first treatment center. I remember while he was lecturing me, I blamed the girl in the car, blamed the guys I was hanging out with, I blamed my mom's suicide, blamed a lot of things. I didn't believe I was an alcoholic. I drank, so what? So does everyone else. And my dad placed me in this treatment center. Actually, it was the same private psych hospital that we put my mom in probably 20 times. And inside the psych hospital, they had this little treatment center. And I walk in there, and people were very kind and caring, but I was petrified. I'm looking around at people who are really old, they're in their 40s. And I'm listening to people who've been in multiple treatment centers, been in jail, married and divorced several times. When I got to A eventually, I thought divorce was a requirement for membership because it seemed like we were all busted up. But I did the 28, 30-day stay in treatment and listened to the groups and all that stuff and got out and was drunk in an hour. And they had mentioned this place called AA. And I just pictured a lot of Bowery bums with raincoats on and all these like weird kind of people. And I'm not an alcoholic, but I went to the liquor store. I had that same young lady meet me at the door. I treated my 30 days in treatment like I did a bit in a state penitentiary. You know, this treatment center had tennis courts on it, for God's sake. And I was drunk in an hour, and the allergy takes over, and I can't stop drinking again. And the consequences started to get worse. And I went on that way for a while, and I got introduced to some non-conference approved dry goods, which I went in, head first, and couldn't get out of that. And I made my second, and then I made my third treatment center. I made my fourth treatment center. Now I'm walking into these treatment centers, not only drinking, as long as I'm awake. If I'm not in jail or I'm not in treatment, I'm drinking. I'm taking pills. I got the trifecta going on, and I'm taking other stuff, IV stuff, right into my arm. So I got the trifecta going on, and I can't get out. A civilian will never understand what we experience, what I experience. Figuratively speaking, I am glued to a bar stool and I got to get home for dinner. I got to get home for the kids. I got to be somewhere, but I can't. I got to have just one more drink. And the second drink screams louder and I cannot get out. I watch life go by me. And I'm full of regrets and remorse and anger and blaming people. This is what was happening to me in my life. I saw my friends pass me right by, go on with careers and relationships and all the nice things life has to offer. And I'm hanging out on a street corner doing what I do, or in some hallway or some dingy bar doing what I do, talking about these great plans and designs I have for my life. Meanwhile, I'm headed into my fifth treatment center. And I walked into my fifth treatment center. I know what I am at this point. I'm a drunken bum. I'm hooked on Valium and I'm hooked on narcotics. I know what I am. You don't have to tell me. And when H and I would bring my favorite commitment AA, they would bring the meetings in with all of this. I looked at H and I folks bringing an AA meeting in as a huge inconvenience. I remember there was a time where there was a hot show called Miami Vice used to be on TV, and Don Johnson was my higher power. And it would go on, I think, Friday night at 9 o'clock. And H and I would bring a meeting in at 8 o'clock. And what I would write on the eraser board was Miami Vice, 9 p.m. Speakers, please leave promptly, because I had to watch Don Johnson. That's where I was at after all of this. And in my fifth treatment center, they had sat me down and they told me how much trouble I was in. And I have hepatitis C at this point, and I'm losing weight. I'm way underweight. I walked into my seventh treatment center, 130 pounds. I'm about 205 right now. Um, and they said 30 days is not going to work. We'd like to, if we can, keep you longer. Now, a client going into treatment, when you talk about extended stay, it sounds like a death sentence. Look for the doors. I got to get out of here. But my dad threatened me, quite frankly, and I stayed for the 9 weeks. And after 9 weeks of being in an inpatient treatment center, by the way, you know your life's not going too well when your side of the door doesn't have a doorknob. That's not a good sign for my life. But there I was. And after 9 weeks, I'm bathing regularly, I'm eating regularly. They're taking me to little fitness centers, so I'm doing a little working out. They're taking me to art therapy, dance therapy, singing therapy. That wasn't good. I'm meeting with the doctor. I'm doing my one-on-ones. They're medicating me. I'm going to group after group after group. I was able to identify every feeling known to mankind after 9 weeks. And something happened between leaving the cocoon of treatment after 9 weeks, where I was fresh-skinned and glowing, and hitting the fresh air. I remember stepping out onto the sidewalk and realizing, oh my God, what do I do now? I had no money. I had no girlfriend. My family wasn't talking to me. I have no car. I'm in a town called Amityville, Long Island. My family lives about 3, 4 hour drive from there. And so what do? I called my dad collect. All those voices in the head are talking to me all at once. Nowadays, I need to be mindful that thinking, that thought life will create my current reality if I'm not careful, once I buy into it. And it owned me back then. I didn't have thoughts, they had me. And so in this panic mode, my dad says, listen, just jump in a cab, come home, and I'll pay for it when you get here. We'll figure your life out when you get to the house. I remember walking in the house, and my brother looked at me and he said to my dad, what's he doing here? He's going to ruin everything. And it was a sobering comment. It was a sobering moment. They were doing fine without me. And I stayed at my dad's house for Saturday and Sunday. And guys, you know what I'm talking about. I'm crawling out of my skin. Everything's going too fast. I can't keep up. I got the chatter of 1,000 voices. I'm anxious. I'm uncomfortable. I got the RIDS. I got the restless, discontented stuff going on. I had them. I'm not alive. I'm just physically there. And my mind said, if we can just get a drink in us and take the edge off, I can function again. And what happened to me on Monday morning, I couldn't take it. I was busting at the seams. I left, I snuck out of the house. It was around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I took a car that wasn't mine. And I headed for South Brooklyn. And I waited for this one liquor store that I used to frequent to open. I've shared this story from a million podiums because it was so important to me waking up and realizing what I'm actually up against. Kind of met my demons, if you will. The game plan was to get 1 pint of whiskey, drive back to my dad's house, ditch the car, and I can chill for a few hours and figure life out. And what alcoholism did was set me up and then gave me the ambush because I got there really early. There was nothing open. I'm getting more and more and more fidgety, more and more uncomfortable. And I got out of the car and began to pace up and down on the sidewalk. It's an interesting thing that happened to me. My body did not need alcohol. I was physically sober. And once we're physically sober, we can't get any more physically sober. But as far as emotional sobriety and spiritually fit, I was a long way from there. I was living in self reliance completely and trying to use the pain of yesterday to keep me sober at that moment, and that's futile. And so what began to happen, I'm pacing up and down the sidewalk and my heart is racing 100 miles an hour and I'm starting to vibrate. My belly starts to get really upset. My forehead is sweating and my hands are clammy and I'm getting really uncomfortable. And the obsession was so loud and so powerful, I felt like I needed a drink because it began to feel physical. I need to get a drink. I didn't need a drink. My mind said, yeah, you do. And when the liquor store finally opened, I ran in there and it was a swanky joint that had the bulletproof glass and you put your money underneath the partition. And I got a pint and ran outside and began to drink it. By the time I finished the pint, you know what happened? I felt better. It's a tranquilizer. It's a sedative. I was breathing. I was back in the saddle. I felt in control. It was good again. I felt okay. The problem is I'm alcoholic. So I never made it to the car because I had to go back into the store, the liquor store, and get a second pint of whiskey. I'm not getting out. I went on one of the worst drunks, but worst experience. I got arrested a few times. Bad things happened to me on this one. That wasn't the game plan. The game plan was to get a little pint of whiskey and kind of smooth things over, and everything's going to be okay. Alcoholism had other plans. And I was out there for a little while and kind of crawled into my sixth treatment center. Once again, my dad, if it wasn't for the courage, strength, and direction God gave him to keep me alive long enough till I got to you, you'd have a different speaker here. But pardon me, my dad brought me to my sixth treatment center, and 36 hours later, I walked out. I AMA'd out of there, and the counselors basically begged me not to leave. And once again, they explained to me the condition of my life. Um, I had the realization while I'm detoxing and they're trying to give me the meds to kind of make it a smooth landing, which wasn't happening. I had the realization that I'm just better off dying. I didn't care much about what I did to other people, but sitting there for a short 36 hours, it burst upon me. When a big book says we tell you how we got out from under, I didn't think I was ever going to get out from under. I leveled my family. They weren't talking to me. There was no woman in her right mind would fly over me. I was unemployable. I'm a bum. And it was my dad going out of pocket to pay for me to go into treatment. Otherwise, I don't know where I would have wound up. I had no insurance or anything like that. And I realized it's never going to change. I'm the guy who's just going to be a statistic. I'm not getting sober. And I looked at my body. I got marks all over me. I have hepatitis C. Now I'm urinating blood. I'm dying of alcoholism. They don't know what's wrong with me. They want to run all these tests on me. I said, I'm better off. I'm leaving. And I wound up in some flea bag motel in Staten Island, New York. And some woman took pity on me. She was a barmaid and says, you can crash out on a couch. I rent a room upstairs. And I stay there. Basically, it was drink and pass out and come to, drink and pass out and come to, and a lot of blackouts. One morning, she finished her shift. It was maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, whatever it was. I don't recall. And when she crashed out, I snuck into the room and I went into her pocketbook because I'm figuring there was a lot of cash in there from her tending bar. I was going to take it. And instead, I discovered a bunch of Valium in a pill bottle she had. And first time I believed in God, He heard my prayers. And I ate what was in there and washed them down with a little alcohol and got on into this bed and quite frankly waited to die. And I welcomed the idea of dying. That's where my alcoholism took me. that dying looked like a good way to go because there was no other solution for me. The depths of despair in that place, if anyone's been there, is awful. It's dark, it's black. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. People say the light at the end of the tunnel was a train headed for me. There was no light. It was Satan's den, and I was in it, and I couldn't get out. When our book talks about shivering denizens of his mad realm, when I looked those words up, that's where I was at, and I can't get out. And God interrupted my death in His infinite mercy once again, and He uses messengers. They're us to go out into the field and bring us back. And I lingered on the streets for a while. And I became homeless, and I really don't know how to do homeless. I wasn't a street fighter. I didn't carry guns. I wasn't a violent drunk. Um, I was petrified most of the time. And I walked with this impending doom. I knew it was a matter of time I was going to get arrested again, and my dad couldn't get me out of this jam. I was going to get hurt really badly on the street. I was going to try to take my own life. It was this impending doom. It's very sobering when you're rolling through the streets at around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I realize if I get killed tonight, I have no ID on me. We didn't have cell phones. I'm a John Doe. No one knows me and where I'm at. I'm a John Doe. And it feels like you can scream as loud as you want, but you're in the middle of a forest and no one's hearing you. It's a lonely place. And when you're homeless, as I have been, you cease to exist. People walk by you and pretend they don't see you. You're a non-person. It's crushing. And I can come into Alcoholics Anonymous and not follow instructions and not do what I'm told and be drunk and sober and drunk and sober. And if I'm lucky to live it out, I'll just live in despair and darkness. And we know those folks in AA, they've been relapsing for 100 years. They just can't get it, constitutionally incapable. I don't know what's worse, dying from alcoholism or lingering like that. Either way, it's hell. And Alcoholics Anonymous has offered me, an old timer said it's a long way into the forest and it's just 12 steps out. How free do I want to be? I had a sponsor, Mark Houston, greatest man I've ever met, greatest teacher I ever had. He says to me over and over and over again, how free do you want to be? I'm living in this abandoned building in the back of a hallway, hating God, hating me, hating life. It's an awful time when no matter how much alcohol you put in your body, you can't get drunk. I can't get there anymore. Whatever I'm trying to escape is coming back tenfold. And I got up off the floor this one morning, and my job now is to go out and panhandle, make some money, get to the liquor store quick. But when I got up, I collapsed. It literally felt like somebody hit me behind the knees. And down I go, and like the fist of Gulliver punching me in the chest because what came up was this purging of tears. And I couldn't stop crying. And I thought of my whole life for a moment. How did I go from where I was to here? How did I get here? This was not the plan. I knew AA didn't work. I knew my church didn't work. I knew treatment didn't work. I can't die. I can't get sober. I can't get drunk. And up until that point, I despised God. I was never an atheist. I knew there was something out there, but I despised it. And in that moment, when I'm on my knees and rolling on the floor, I beg God for mercy. And my exact words are, please take me from this. I don't want to die. It was as sincere as I could get at that moment. It was a moment where desperation screamed louder than the ego, and I was made right size. My plea to God was sincere. I had no attachments. I'm going to go to treatment or detox and go to AA and be Moses by Tuesday and recite the big book and concept you to death and tradition you to death. None of that. I just don't want to die. What God gave me was paradise. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I walk into my 7 treatment center. And my mind was not done with me because about 10 or 12 days in there, it's telling me we need a drink. And by God's grace, I didn't drink. They sent me out to Minnesota and I did more treatment. I did something called halfway, three quarter, and sober living. It was about a year in total. And in that year, without having any steps yet in my life, and not truly, not even awakened spiritually, but when we're sincere and the intent is pure, God delivers. The effort to seek God never goes unrewarded. There's a quote in scripture that says, nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. When he's involved and he wins. What he did for me was close the ears to the mind and open up the ears to my soul. And I heard you. Now you were talking for years, H and I and the counselors, and it was happening. But I heard you for the first time, but I didn't hear it with this. I heard it from this. You know, in AA, when somebody's sharing and we got that AA nod, we do this thing when we identify, we do that head bouncing. That's the soul acknowledging what it always knew. It's a physical reaction. It's not a conclusion of the mind. It's just a yes, I'm home. And I was brought back to New York about a year later and brought to my first home group. And I met my first sponsor, who wasn't well received in my neighborhood in Brooklyn because he was a big book guy, and there weren't a lot of big book guys. They looked at him as a threat. But he was awake, enlightened, if I can be so bold. And I asked him to sponsor me. We began the journey through the steps. About 8 years later, he stopped doing all those things, bless his heart, and he started to fall away. And I prayed to God, please show me a teacher. And there was a guy, Tom N. from Staten Island, said, I want you to listen to this cassette tape. For newcomers, there were things called cassette tapes back in the day, believe it or not. And he gave me a cassette tape of a guy named Mark H. And I listened to it. I didn't know who he was. And I said to myself, what an arrogant, pompous SOB this guy is. And I listened to the tape the second time. And I says, what an arrogant, pompous SOB. The third time I listened to it, I said, I think I love this man. He better sponsor me. And Mark was up to New York for something called Fellowship of the Spirit. And he was doing a workshop. And he was staying at a friend of mine, Tom's house. And I asked him, and Mark says, I was waiting for you. What took so long? And my life changed. I saw recovery in God and AA at a level I never even knew was possible. And this new journey began. And my family, I think I'm running out of time here. My family that was riddled with alcoholism, and they're not alcoholic, little by slowly was put back together because of the healing that takes place in me. And my brothers and I we still are incredibly close. I lost my dad a few years ago. He and I kind of healed, and he became a hero to me, my best friend, someone I trust more than basically anyone for a long time. And there was a healing. I was in a really bad marriage. He was an alcoholic and a cocaine addict, and just it was messy. And I prayed to God what to do, and I spoke to my sponsor, and I got out of that relationship. And it was a handful of years later. I don't know how many years later. I was fulfilling a service commitment to go speak in a town called Bellingham, Washington, which is a long way from New Jersey, where I was living. So on the other side of the planet, basically. And while I was out there, I go to speak, and I came home with a wife. I mean, I met, you do service, give me, you meet a wife. I went out there, I met Marion. We hit it off, thinking we'd never see each other again. We would talk and chat and find out how much we love the Lord, love AA. She's a musician. I was a musician. And when she told me her sponsor was Polly Pistol, who I idolized, I almost proposed on the spot. And it just we got married a few years ago, and our house is lovely because it's like a phone room sometimes with all the people calling, sponsees and things, and how traveling and my traveling, and it's just been a great life. And I have to say this before I get out of here, and I'm going to embarrass the heck out of him, but I have to say it. My buddy Chris is out here, Chris R., who was like a big brother to me when I first got in here. I didn't know anything about traveling. And I wound up hooking up with him to go travel, and he looked out for me. Sat me down one day and says the dangers of getting out speaking and set me straight on some things. Just a lot of things he did for me. And I'm forever grateful to giants like that, to heroes in my life. So, Chris, I love you, man. And anyway, before I fall apart here, I'm going to get off. That's all I got. Thank you.